Hi. So I ended up recording this video earlier, but it turns out the microphone wasn't working. And so I'm here to just kind of show a quicker version of how we are looking at our end of module review. And when looking at these questions, the numbers are going to be very similar to the test that the students are taking. However, the numbers that we see or the digits that they're in might be a little bit different, but the underlying concept is still the same. Looking here at number one, we need to compare the values of the 5 and 552,299. And so what we did is we would draw our place value chart and look at where these fives are. And the students learned that when you're moving from a digit from the left or from one position to the left, it is being multiplied by 10. So seeing that these are two of the same numbers or same digits with different values, we know that 500,000s is 10 times as much as 5 10,000s. In reality, that would be 500,000 is 10 times as much as 50,000. And that would look similar to this equation. 500,000 equals 10 times 50,000. Okay, so overall, we're looking for students to understand that two of the same digits that are next to each other will have a relationship of the left number being 10 times as much as the right number, or the values are 10 times greater. Now, when we look for number two, we're looking at comparing numbers. I always ask the students to write down the numbers in its standard form, so that way they could visually see and compare it instead of looking at units, because it's easier to compare numbers to numbers. Here we have an addition problem. We wrote out 371,000 plus 9 10,000s, which is 90,000. We add it together, we get 461,000, and we'll get our answer here. 461,000 is greater than 380,000. We do the same ideas down here where we're showing our numbers in its standard form by writing it all out and then solving. So 200,000 minus 1,000 is 199,000. We know 199,000 is less than 300,000. Okay, and the same thing here, we see that we are showing everything out. We're writing these unit forms in standard form, adding them together or subtracting depending on what they tell us, and then we can compare it. So that's the same underlying concept of what we're doing here. 608,000 minus 100,000. We know that this would be 608,000, and we subtract 100,000. We're going to get 508,000, which is less than 607,000. Because if we write that out, that's 607,000. I want students to be able to write these back and forth and be able to interpret them from word form or unit form into standard form, because we're going to see numbers presented in different ways like this all the time, and students need to be able to go back and forth. And that's how we would answer number two, by looking at our numbers, finding their standard form, and then comparing it based on what we see in their units. Number three is a little bit harder. This is our multi-step problem. We're looking at highlighting important information in our text. So what's the subject, and then how much do they have? We know that there's three different steps here. So we would stop after every period and write down what we know. Tallahassee, Florida has a population of 483,493. We would stop and write that down. Then we have New York. New York has 345,876 more people than Tallahassee. So we know that New York will have, compared to Tallahassee, Florida, it's going to have 345,876 more. So we would need to add it all together, and we'll end up with New York having 829,369. Now for the next part here, we'll have Phoenix, Arizona has 279,426 less people than New York. So that means Arizona compared to New York will have 279,426 less. So when we end up subtracting that all together, we're going to have that Arizona has 549,943 in their population. So now we have our main part of our question, which is what is the total population of all three cities? That means we have to add the value of all three cities. So when we look down here, we have Tallahassee, Florida, New York, and Phoenix, Arizona. We add it all together to answer our question of the total population of all three cities is 1,862,805. Now, when we look down here, it's asking us to round to the the nearest 100,000. Check the reasonableness for your answer of the population of Phoenix, Arizona. I'm sorry, we ended up doing this a little bit wrong. We only needed to focus on Phoenix, Arizona. Okay, and so if we're going to show how this problem works out, excuse me, okay, we know that Phoenix, Arizona was based on having New York's population, and we subtracted 279,429. So when we do that, we're going to need to do our rounding. If we know that New York has 829,369, we round that by finding that 100,000 spot. Look next door, and since that's a 2, our 8 will stay the same. So New York has about 800,000 people in their population. And if we round out the subtraction value, we look here, we're actually gonna add 1 to our 100,000s because we're at 70,000, we're closer to 300,000. So if we round that, it is about 300,000 less than New York. So now we have 800,000 minus 300,000, which will get us to Phoenix should be about 500,000. Okay, and if we look at the total that we had here, we had that Phoenix equaled 549,943. And if we round that to compare it to this, we're gonna get 500,000. So since these two numbers are equal, that shows that our answer is reasonable. So we can say that our answer is reasonable. It's just to check it. So we are just looking for students to show their work. That's all. They don't need to say it is reasonable. They don't need to say that it is not reasonable unless it says, is it reasonable, and explain. This one is just to check. So they have to show the work. I'm sorry, this one down here, like I said, was wrong. This one is the right one where we're taking the actual values, rounding them, and then subtracting versus finding the actual value before we round it and then comparing it, okay? So there's a lot of steps for this problem too. We had to rely on the information from our previous problem to make sure we got this problem correct. Now, when we take a look at our next spot here, it's looking at word form, standard form, and expanded form. I'm just gonna do the example of Phoenix, Arizona for time's sake. Okay, and if we look at the previous problem, we found that Phoenix, Arizona was at 549,943. And I'm trying to show you the work here so I can show you where we're getting our answer from. Now that we have that, word form is just we spell it out. And I'll zoom in a bit so it's easier to see. So now we're gonna have 49,943. All words, no numbers. That's all we need to do. Now, when we're looking at expanded form is where we take the value of each of those numbers and we add it together. One of the ways that we showed that work for that is we would put our number into a place value chart. So I'll draw a place value chart. Ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, and 100,000s. There would be millions, but this number doesn't go that far. And we see that it's 549,943. And all we're going to do is take the values of each of these numbers and write it as an addition problem. So here, this we have 500,000, so that's be 500,000. Plus there's 4 10,000s, which is 40,000. Here we have 9,000, so that's 9,000. Plus there's 900s here, so that's 900. Plus 4 10s there, which is 40. And 3 1s here, which is 3. So our expanded form would look just like that. We're going to write it out as 500,000 plus 40,000 plus 9,000 plus 900 plus 40 plus 3. So that's what our expanded form would end up looking like. For letter D, it says compare the population of Tallahassee, Phoenix, or Tallahassee and Phoenix. So all those data was right on the previous spot. Tallahassee has 483,493. Phoenix, we found, was 549,943. Okay. So we got all of that from our previous page and calculations. And we can see here, this is 483,000, this is 549,000. 549 is greater than 483. So that part was comparing. That's pretty similar to what we did in question number 2. For E, it says John lives in Gilroy, California, which has a population of 48,821. Okay. He says that Tallahassee is about 10 times as large as the city of Gilroy. So it says about, so it can be close. It doesn't need to be exact. So we know Tallahassee, from our data up here, it's 483,493. And we need to see, if we multiply the population of Gilroy times 10, will we get to be close to the population of Tallahassee? Or we can make it easier, since it says about, we can round. I want to choose to round to the nearest 10,000. And I mean, you could round to the nearest 100,000 also if you like. But by rounding there, I'll round Tallahassee to be about 480,000. So if I take the population of Gilroy at 48,821, I multiply that by 10, because it says it's about 10 times. I'll get an answer of 488,000. 488,210. Okay, and then now that I have that, I can take a look and see if I round or go to the same place value. That's an 8. I look here. That will round up to 490,000. And 480,000 is pretty close to 490,000 if you're looking at it, at how big it is. If you round it to the nearest 100,000, so that will be 4 looking to the 8, that would be 500,000. Here, that would also be 4 to the 8, that would be 500,000. So seeing that the estimates are equal to each other, that is also showing that they are about 10 times as large. So, or the comparison will show that Tallahassee is about 10 times as large as Gilroy, because our estimates are equal, or they're just really close to each other. I'm sorry if this seemed really short. I had to remake this video with sound, but if you have any other questions on this, please feel free to email me, and I will try to answer back as soon as I can. Especially if you are concerned about one of the problems or something I said did not make sense. Okay, thank you so much and have a great day. Bye.